We've all heard these kind of claims, 100% guaranteed fluency. This is the best method, the fastest method to learn a language. And you know, not gonna lie, they make great YouTube clickbait titles. But let's today evaluate the claims that are made in these. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Will. I'm a second year medical student at the University of Manchester. And for those of you who probably don't know me well, maybe it's your first time coming to this channel, and I really thank you if that is the case. I've learned Mandarin to a decent level in about just under 2 years. I've learned Mandarin for 3 years now, and on this channel I just like to share about meta learning, about language learning, about productivity. So let's get into today's topic. Is there a best way to learn a language? In all honesty, I think my answer to this question is quite simple. I don't think there is a best way to learn a language, and the answer to this is because there's no way of proving this. You know, in medicine there's this concept of a randomized controlled trial, and what that means is we take two groups of people, and then we've got the researchers as well, and the two groups of people will have like one. So for example, if we're testing a new drug, we'll take one group of people and we'll give them the new drug, and we'll take the second group of people and we'll give them the standard treatment, the treatment that's been used for like a long time, or is like currently the gold standard that's used at the moment. And neither the patients themselves or the researchers know who's taken what drug, and then we use statistics and some tests, etc., to work out who's like responded best to treatment, who's had like the best recovery, etc., whose illness may or may not have been cured. And this way there's eliminating all the biases, and we get good results from that. We get good solid evidence. That's like kind of the gold standard we use in medicine in terms of evaluating evidence, like a randomized, double-blind, randomized controlled trial. And I'm using this analogy not just because, you know, I'm a medical student. It's because if we were to try and replicate the same thing in the language learning world, it'd be very, very difficult. We would try and get two methods of language learning. Neither the researchers nor the kind of people who were, how would you avoid them not knowing like what method they're using? And also, how would you get like an accurate comparison between two methods? Because there's so many factors involved. It's not as simple as you're either taking a drug or you're not. It's how much listening are you doing? How much reading are you doing? Are you using spaced repetition? Are you going for this kind of all-in immersion technique of just listening to Mandarin for 10 hours a day? Like, there's no way of controlling for all these other variables in the way that we can in the medical world. So it's very, very difficult to compare two methods. And that's the reason why I believe there isn't like a way of proving that there is one ultimate method of learning a language. And I hope that we can all understand that and kind of accept that fact that there isn't one best method, one size fits all for language learning. So I'd just like to point out, I think with language learning, you know, pretty much anything will work if you just put enough time at it. If you spend 4,000 hours just listening to Mandarin, I don't know, a Mandarin radio, a Mandarin podcast, I suspect at some point you will eventually get a good grasp of Mandarin. But then it kind of changes the question a bit. Is there a best way of learning, or is there because we know like lots of different methods will work, and lots of people who are sharing on YouTube, etc., they've always used different methods, right? So the question more is, what is the most efficient, what is the fastest way to get to our goals? Again, we have the whole idea like, what are our goals? So for example, when I was learning like Mandarin, I'm kind of currently maintaining my level at the moment. My goal was to try and communicate well and to get fluent and to be able to speak fluently. And then obviously like I had other goals, like for example being able to read books, etc. But if we just take the example of my speaking ability, you know, I could measure that quite easily because I could get feedback from my friends, I could get feedback from my girlfriend, I could kind of ask them, you know, how do you think my Mandarin is, etc. So I think one of the main things in this is that we need to have some form of feedback. We need to know, are we getting towards our goals, so we can know, are we improving in the first place? And then based on that, we can kind of iterate our method, you know, change our method based on how we're doing. And then we can make a more personalized approach. And I think for this, it's important to consider like the Pareto principle, I believe it's called, like this 80-20 rule. So for most of the things in whatever we're doing, about 20% of the techniques or like the time that we're spent is actually giving 80% of the results. And for me, it took a while to kind of work out what was getting me the best results in Mandarin. And I think we should all spend some time like when we're learning languages, to try and consider what's getting the results for us personally. If you're watching this video and you're kind of thinking, oh, well, I don't even know where to start. Like I thought there would be this one best method, and I thought you were going to share it with me today, Will. Well, all I can do now is just kind of from my own personal experience, and also from like my friends' experience who have reached good levels in other languages, etc. I can kind of share some ideas that I believe have really helped me and my friends to do so. Before we start, I just want to share a quote which I really liked from, it's actually from an interview I did with Fan Lao Shi, with Rita, and you can check out her channel. She's a great Chinese teacher if you're interested in learning Mandarin. And she said, 语言的本质是形式和意义. And you know, how I interpreted this later and how it kind of changed my Mandarin experience was that it made me think about language learning in terms of like what we are basically doing is we're becoming familiar with grammatical structures, and then we're replacing and substituting words that we're in those grammatical structures to kind of express different meanings. That is basically the underlying principles behind language learning, right? So then the steps that we need to take all involve like trying to be able to get good at getting familiar with these grammar structures, and then being able to substitute words in and out to try and create the meaning that we want to make. Okay, so that's enough of me waffling, right? Let's get into the tips. Firstly, I would say learn pronunciation early. So I think a lot of people make this mistake, and I've had friends that have done so as well, that if you don't spend a lot of time practicing pronunciation at the start, as you get further down your journey, it will become harder and harder to change, and it will probably leave you with a very foreign sounding accent. So it's important to invest a lot of time. I personally liked the IPA, like the International Phonetic Alphabet, and obviously in Chinese, and there's also Pinyin, which really helps the learning process. And next we have get lots of input. So one of the things I regret about my Mandarin learning journey was that I didn't like start getting enough input early enough on. So I kind of like would memorize lots and lots of vocab and not really know how it all fits together because I wasn't listening, I wasn't reading and engaging in the language. So I'd say get lots of high quality input that's suitable for your level. So watching like TV shows, reading books, etc. Or if you're just starting out, then that will be probably watching some very basic YouTube videos, etc. The next tip I have for you guys is learn with spaced repetition. So I really love Anki, and it's kind of all over this channel so far. But what I would suggest is learn in context. So use like a method like sentence mining, for example, where you're learning the vocab with spaced repetition, but in the context of a sentence. So you know how it all fits together, you know how like the interactions between the different words, etc. And I'm going to be making some more videos on how to do this properly in the near future. So if you're interested, you can look forward to that. Next, we have make friends and ask for feedback. This is such a big one I found. So I'm lucky enough to live in Manchester, where there's lots of different people from lots of different cultures, and that also means there's a lot of Chinese students here coming to study, etc. So I've been able to make lots and lots of Chinese friends, and they've given me such good feedback. I generally bet if I didn't have them, I wouldn't be able to like achieve the kind of things I have in such a short period of time. So yeah, make friends that speak your target language as their mother tongue, and then get feedback from them. Ask them like, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Like, are there any kind of pronunciation mistakes that you can tell that I've got? Or am I using these words wrong? Like, you need to be asking questions like this regularly, because some people are too polite. They probably won't tell you if you're like, I don't know, absolutely butchering their mother tongue. So yeah, you need to ask and try and get as much feedback as you can. Leads nicely into the next tip, which is practice speaking a lot. So I spent a lot of time practicing speaking. I had a lot of language partners, and I have obviously a lot of Chinese friends, as I've said, that I would like spend lots and lots of time speaking, and then everything they told me that I was doing wrong, I would write down the correct thing, or I'd get them to send it to me, and I'd put that in the spaced repetition system and like learn the correct way of saying something. So that's how you're going to use the feedback that you're being given by native speakers. Or if there's a pronunciation mistake, I'd get them to correct it until it sounds right. Like I'd get them to keep on telling me, oh, like, so for example, in Mandarin, the big problem is with tones, right? So I would get my friends to be like, am I making any tone mistakes? Like, can you correct them? Can you tell me the right way of saying it? And I'll just keep imitating and imitating. Next, we have try and get some active immersion. What do I mean by active immersion? So this is kind of an idea that I've borrowed from my friend Misha, who has this awesome new event going on in the UK. If you're interested, I'll leave a link to his website below. So he's a co-founder of something called Mandarin Retreats, where there's like active immersion in Mandarin in the UK. So there's trips for a weekend, and you just speak Mandarin all day, every day. So this kind of active immersion is rather than just passively listening, you're engaging in the language, and like forced to speak this language all day. And I found this really useful. Like, I've been on one of their retreats, and I've also, you know, when I've gone to stay with Chinese friends and we've just spoken Mandarin all day, like it really does help, because you're forced to try and think in the language and live in the language. Finally, the last tip I want to give you guys is experiment. You know, try different methods, because like I said, language learning isn't one size fits all. It really isn't. There's a clear-cut research like showing that this is the best way to learn a language and nothing else will work. That's really not the case. So you need to just try, and I think it's much of a process of like trial and error. Just keep on trying until you find something that works for you, and then stick with it and learn from other people. Like, if you find, for example, on my channel, if you found some ideas useful, like try and implement them, and then see like what's working, what isn't, make changes, and then keep on going. That's how we get good at like optimizing our language learning routine. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I know I've done a bit of waffling, but I really hope that what I've shared today has been useful. And yeah, on this, I'm planning to kind of turn this into a podcast series. So this is like the introduction to this. And what I'm going to be doing is interviewing lots of kind of successful language learners about their own journey and what they found useful, to try and help us all to get better at language learning, and see if there's any patterns between like what people who get fluent in a language really quickly, like what kind of things they actually do. So yeah, if you've got any questions, any comments, please do give me a comment down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel, and let me know if you've got any ideas for any future videos that you'd be interested in seeing. Okay, thank you so much again, guys. I'll see you next time.